guys, Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you a video today to share my thoughts on the new Adidas Ace 15.1 and X 15.1 models. These are the two new models that Adidas has just unveiled that will be replacing their current lineup of soccer cleats. So that means no more Predator, no more F50, no more 11 Pro, and no more Nitro Charge. It's a very bold move by Adidas, something that they're calling a revolution, and I thought I'd make a video to share my thoughts on what information and pictures have been released so far regarding the X and Ace lines from Adidas. Now, as far as when these things are going to be available and when I will have pairs in my hands to actually review, that is something that I don't really have an answer for you just yet. These things are available for pre-order. The top-end models are available in both leather and synthetic variations, both retailing for $220 US, but they are not due to be in stock until at least July. Some websites say July 1st, some websites say mid-July, some websites just say July in general. So nobody really knows when these things are actually going to be available to the public. I'm going to be working on getting a pair of each of the new models and all the current variations as soon as possible, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, I don't know when I'm going to have these things, but hopefully very, very soon. We still are, like I said, kind of a month out from these things being readily available to the public. So while we're waiting, I thought it'd be cool to make a video and just share my opinions on what information is available to the public so far. Of course, if you have any opinions yourself, share those down below in the comment section as well, and we'll get a bit of a discussion going. And with that being said, let's get right into the video. The first aspect of the new X and Ace line from Adidas that I want to talk about is how they're actually marketing these two new models. Now, they've said that the Ace line is for the player who controls the field, who controls the play, who controls the game in general, whereas the X line is for the chaos player, the guy who is always causing trouble, generally the goal scorer, something like that. And it's a pretty clever marketing scheme, and just based on the design of the shoes, you can see that the marketing scheme works perfectly with what the final product ended up being from a visual standpoint. At the end of the day though, does this mean that if you're a striker, you absolutely must wear the X model? No. You can wear the Ace model just fine. It's not going to change your ability to perform out there on the field. The main reason why these companies come out with marketing schemes like this is because it helps them to sell shoes. It helps them to justify having multiple lines. And for somebody who is kind of blindly stepping into the soccer cleat world, perhaps they don't really know what to buy, something like this could perhaps persuade them into buying an Adidas shoe, whatever line it may be. With that being said, soccer cleats are about feel, and it's really a matter of personal preference in terms of what you should buy. Your position, your playing style, your attributes as a player in general should not impact what shoes you should buy. Marketing in general should be completely ignored. If you're comfortable wearing a pair of Copas, you're comfortable wearing a pair of Copas, period. Regardless of what position you are in the field, regardless of your attributes as a player, that's just what you like to wear, and that's what you should wear. So for people who will ask questions, what's going to be the better option of the two new models for myself personally, it really depends on what type of feel that you're looking for. And based on what we've seen with the tech specs, both the Ace and the X 15.1 will offer pretty different feels from each other. So at the end of the day, it's really a matter of personal preference and not so much what the marketing says you should buy. The next thing that I want to talk about are the aesthetics of the X and Ace line from Adidas. They've definitely had some mixed reviews just based on opinions that I've seen in comment sections on the internet. People really seem to not like the look of the X 15.1, and I can see where they're coming from. If you've watched any of Adidas's marketing videos and just read up on anything that they've been saying about the shoe, they really stress the chaotic aspect of the X 15.1. It matches the marketing, and you obviously see that in the final design of the shoe. Is it the most attractive shoe? I don't think so, but I don't think it's ugly. I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. I think it's something a little bit different. And if you liked the current 2015 F50 Adizero, this is a design that is kind of along the lines of that shoe, where the three stripes branding isn't quite as significant on the shoe in general, and I personally don't mind that. I think that the launch colorway maybe isn't the best, but I think there's a lot of potential for this particular shoe from a visual standpoint, and honestly, I don't mind how they look. They actually do remind me a little bit of the what's the shoe called? The X Blades Wild Thing. I made a video on these a long time ago. It's not actually a soccer brand. It's more of a rugby brand. Some of you guys may be familiar with X Blades. I'll leave an annotation on screen to that video if you want to go ahead and check it out. Obviously, the design isn't exactly the same, but that's kind of the first shoe that I thought of when I saw the X 15.1 for the first time. As far as the Ace 15.1 is concerned, I really like how that shoe looks. It's got a kind of a cool grid pattern. It reminds me a little bit of the Predator line in general. It also reminds me a little bit of the Umbro UX1, which is also a pretty cool looking shoe in my opinion. So personally, I'm pretty happy with the overall appearance of the Ace line. The X line, I think, still has to grow on me a little bit. I want to see it in some more colorways before I can kind of give a final verdict on whether or not I think the shoe is ugly or not. But for me personally, I don't mind the new look. I think that they both look distinctly different from what is currently or what has been offered from Adidas in the past, and it's going to stand out from other shoes out there on the field, which at the end of the day is one of the most important things for any brand. They want their shoes to look different from everybody else, and I think they've done that successfully here with the X and Ace models. But let me know your opinions on it down below in the comment section. Do you think they are good looking? Do you think they're ugly? Are you kind of in the middle? Kind of like I am with the X boot? Let me know your opinions down below in the comment section. I'd be curious to hear what they are, because like I said, just based on comments I've seen on the internet, I would say that it is 70 to 80% negative from a visual standpoint, which kind of surprises me. Perhaps the biggest draw of the new X and Ace line from Adidas is the stud pattern, most notably the firm ground / AG variation that they are offering. They're going to be the only brand with a shoe that is designed for use on both firm natural grass playing surfaces as well as artificial grass playing surfaces, something that you would otherwise require two shoes for, one pair of firm grounds and one pair of AGs. And since so many people nowadays are playing on both natural grass and artificial grass in the same season, in the same week, like I said, this eliminates the need for two pairs of shoes and allows you to use one single pair for the entire season. Now, it's one thing to say that you can use the shoe on both turf and natural grass. It's another thing to see how they're actually going to perform. So I'm very, very curious about that. I think that when I see the Ace 15 stud pattern, that is completely new. It does look like it could be used and would actually perform well on both natural grass as well as artificial grass. Whereas when I look at the X15 stud pattern, it definitely looks to be more of an F50 Adizero 2014 variation as far as the actual shape of the studs are concerned. Of course, you have kind of a unique pattern there going through the middle of the shoe, but it looks more like a firm ground stud pattern to me as opposed to some kind of a hybrid, whereas the Ace 15, like I said, definitely does look like it would perform really, really well on both natural grass as well as artificial grass. And performance is one thing, but I think durability is one of those major points that is going to be the big test for Adidas with these kind of hybrid stud patterns to see if the shoe will hold up on artificial grass as well as natural grass, because artificial grass, especially with a firm ground shoe, can really decrease the lifespan of that particular shoe. So very curious to see how this is actually going to work out for them, if the shoe is going to be durable, how the performance is going to be, not so much on firm ground, but mostly on artificial grass, because firm ground stud patterns in general can be very, very clingy and somewhat unsafe when used on AG fields. So something that, like I said, is a major selling point if you're one of those players that does play on both firm ground as well as artificial grass in the same season, and you can only afford to buy one pair of high-end shoes. The Ace 15 and the X 15 may be something to consider. Again, only time will tell. As far as the X 15.1 is concerned, it is a very interesting shoe from a performance standpoint. It has an upper with a tech fit base, so a lot of people are automatically going to compare that to the Flyknit models from Nike. It is still cut below the ankle, but it has kind of a sock-like enclosure, a sock-like base layer that spans the entire foot, which I think is going to make for a nice, comfortable, seamless sensation when you slide this shoe on your foot. Really optimistic about that particular design. On top of that, you have their X Skin upper, which is a replacement for Hybrid Touch, but in all honesty, looks quite similar. So I don't expect it to be too much different. It looks thin, and I think that's what you can expect from the X line in general. On top of that X Skin upper, you have the X Cage. This shoe has all the X technologies, which essentially is a fused on support cage. That's what gives it that kind of interesting pattern there on the outside. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's there to provide support on both the lateral and medial side of the shoe. Laces run through the middle. It still does appear to have a tongue on top of the tech fit base, which is kind of an interesting little element. And then of course you do have the grip dots on top for supposedly better grip on the ball in all types of weather playing conditions. So something that, again, is trying to compete with Nike's ACC technology, which Nike has managed to implement on their shoes, being completely invisible, and people have really bought into that technology. Even though I think it does have somewhat of an impact on performance, it's not a make or break type of feature in terms of how your experience is going to be with that particular shoe. So I'm curious to see how this kind of micro grip dot thing that they've implemented on both the Ace and the X model is actually going to feel on these new Adidas lines. As far as the sole plate is concerned, it is their new X claw stud pattern, and the sole plate itself seems to be a standard plastic material with actual cutouts in it, which are supposed to save weight. So that would imply that this shoe is going to be the lighter of the two variations, more or less a replacement for the F50 Adizero. So I'm curious to see how light they're actually going to be. And the stud pattern, for the most part, like I said, looks a lot like what we got from the 2014 F50 in terms of its kind of core layout and the actual shape of the stud. So in terms of overall performance, pretty optimistic about this shoe. It's probably the more unique of the two options currently on offer. And of course, there is going to be a leather variation available as well, which from the looks of it just appears to be kind of a leather upper variation for the F50 Adizero, where you get a little bit of leather at the forefoot area and the rest of the shoe kind of remains synthetic. So until I have the shoes in my hands, I don't want to judge them too hard as far as performance is concerned, but I have to say that I like the design. I think that it's going to feel very comfortable, and it's just an interesting thin synthetic, hopefully lighter than we expect soccer cleats. So the only thing that does worry me is that while they do have the cutouts in the sole plate, and it is a thin synthetic shoe, they really haven't given any mention of weight. So I think that this is not going to be a shoe that's going to be in the 5 to 6 ounce weight range like we used to see with the F50 line. More so probably something that's going to be in the 7 to 8 ounce weight range, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think a lot of people perhaps would like something a little bit lighter. Again, I don't know this for sure. I'm just going based on what Adidas has said so far. But overall, optimistic about the design. I think it looks pretty good, and I'm excited to try them out. As far as the Ace 15.1 model is concerned, I'm actually really excited about this shoe. It features what they call their control web upper, and the construction of the shoe actually reminds me a little bit of the Nike Magista Opus. The Opus has a performance mesh base layer and then a Kangalite kind of cutout perforated layer on top of that, whereas with the control web upper on the new Ace 15.1, you have a base layer of what appears to be the same tech fit material found on the base layer of the X 15.1 with kind of a rubbery, kind of hard foam type of material, again with little cutouts throughout the entire upper on top of that tech fit base layer that basically makes up the entire upper. So I expect it to be very flexible. I expect it to be a little bit thicker in comparison to the X 15.1, just based on the pictures. It seems to be a little bit more of a sturdy, kind of more solid shoe, and it's really hard to say how grippy that upper material is actually going to be. We don't know if it's going to be more of a harder foam or more of a stickier rubber material. So it could be a direct replacement for the Predator line, obviously just without the Predator name and with some different styling overall. But overall, I think it's a pretty good looking shoe, and I'm excited to see how it's going to work out. It too, just like the X 15.1, does have the grip dots all over, so kind of curious to see how much grip that's actually going to provide on the ball in both dry as well as wet weather playing conditions. Central lacing system, it does have an external heel counter, which I really like the look of. And then of course their new stud pattern that they call the ground control stud pattern, where it's all conical studs, but there's a lot of studs running through the middle of the shoe. So when you actually put your foot on top of the ball, I'm assuming they're going to be a softer rubber type of material, so they'll grip the ball a little bit better, and it'll just provide more of a controlled sensation in that type of a situation when your foot is on top of the ball. So an interesting feature. Kind of curious to see how that stud pattern is going to perform on natural grass. I think it'll do pretty well on artificial grass, but on natural grass, I'm just wondering if there's actually too many studs there, or if they are kind of narrow in profile enough to actually penetrate the ground and provide adequate grip. But overall, really am optimistic about the synthetic variation of the shoe. The leather version, not sure if you guys have seen the pictures online, does have a leather upper. They haven't really specified if it's kangaroo leather or calfskin leather, just based on what I've seen so far, but it does appear to have kind of a webbing base layer similar to the internal skeleton support frame we currently see on the 11 Pro 3. So the leather version of the Ace 15.1, at least based on the pictures that I've seen so far, could potentially be something along the lines of what we currently have with the 11 Pro 3, which is not a bad thing at all. So it's nice to see that we're going to have two very solid synthetic models in the Ace 15.1 and X 15.1, a solid leather model, or what looks to be a solid leather model with the Ace 15.1, and then we're getting the leather variation of the X 15.1, which to me doesn't look quite as impressive as the other three shoes that I just mentioned. So overall, very, very optimistic about this new lineup from Adidas. Again, leave your opinions on it down below in the comment section. That's pretty much all I have to say. If you have any other input, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll get an answer out to you. And if you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. Again, I will be following up with more coverage on the new Adidas line as soon as I'm able to get my hands on these things. They're not supposed to be available for another month. They're going to be working very hard to get them in as soon as possible. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.